Hello, sir. Xavier, sir.
Shankar sir, we are live now. We'll start in another 1 minute.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay.
Shankar sir, we can start now. You can turn on your camera and mic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and privilege in welcoming all the participants to the webinar organized by English Language Teachers Association of India on communicative skills in English. Now let's watch a video about ELTAI. Good evening. Today's topic is about communicative skills in English. Communication plays a very important role in everyone's life, and that will take them to a greater level. Whatever good we see in our world today is because of an educative mind behind it. It is not just about spoon feeding, but about inspiring them to think out of the box and foresee a better future. It is all about how to apply it in real life to change the world for a better cause. There are three speakers today. I'm very much privileged to introduce the teacher speaker, Dr. Praveen Joshi. Dr. Praveen Joshi currently holds the position as the Director, Prerna College of Commerce, Nagpur. Was formerly head, Department of English, and Vice Principal, DRB, Sindhu Mahavidyalaya, Nagpur. He has several positions as President, Forum for Creative Writers in English, ex-member, Board of Studies, Nagpur University, editor, Dewdrops Literary Journal, editor of an English textbook, Nagpur University, editor of a Prerna International Research Journal, and advisor for Creative Books, New Delhi. He has authored 3 books and published more than 60 research papers in national and international level, and delivered 250 talks in different colleges and universities and trained teachers. And he has been honored with the Bharat Shiksha Ratna Award, Social Amity Award, and Educational Excellence Award. We are very happy to have you here, sir, in this webinar. There are 2 student speakers. Firstly, Ms. Shakshi Bhavane. She has won first in debate competition and represented Prerna College in debate competitions in RTMNU. And the next speaker, Nivruti Wankar. He has won 3 times Mayor Cup trophy for singing, stood first in Ek Patri Abhinay Spardha, and represented Prerna College of Commerce in several singing competitions. And he has been running a YouTube channel named Mice and Scene Production. 2 very enthusiastic and prominent students. We are so happy to have you amidst your schedule. Now I do invite Dr. Praveen Joshi and Sakshi and Nivruti to have the session. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. The organizers of this wonderful event, Professor Shankaran Kumar, and the moderator and other members of the organizing team. I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak to the upcoming generation of the youths of India. ELTAI has been doing a lot to see that the students of our country are good communicators in English. Today, as we know, out of 196 countries, about 145 countries transact in English. It is the language of business, trade, industry, defense, politics, and education. There is not a single profession which we can take up with any foreign country without having the knowledge of English. Therefore, the UGC and other bodies of education in India, their thirst is more on the communicative part. Those who are interested, they may study literature in their career. They may study English literature as a kind of hobby or as a kind of profession. But what is required? What is required is that we should be good communicators in English. We should be able to use the language for our day-to-day conversation. Without knowing English, many things in life become difficult for us. If you travel abroad, if you travel even in some part of India, you will find that English remains the medium of communication. India being a very vast country, there are certain states where even Hindi is not followed. So, what is the alternative for that? So, English becomes that alternative language. And if we do not know English, the communication becomes very difficult. Now, today we are going to have the views of these two students on communicative competence. These two students who can communicate in English are also aware of certain problems that all those who study English as a second language face in their day-to-day life whenever they have to use English. There may be many reasons. We will look into all those reasons and we'll see what we can do in order to improve our communication skills in English. I think the PPT is not available here. Yes. So my first question to Nivrutti is, Nivrutti, you should explain what is communication. What do you understand by the word communication?
Thank you, sir. So I would like to, communication is simply expressing your thoughts, your ideas or emotions via a medium where I can categorize communication as verbal communication and non-verbal communication. While talking about verbal communication, I can say in verbal communication, one requires a proper language to communicate. But while in non-verbal communication, we can have many of the types, just as our hand gesture, our body posture, or even if just an eye contact is okay.
Okay, Sakshi, what would you like to say about the term communication?
Sir, I agree with the Nivrutti that communication is classified into two main terms, that is verbal and non-verbal.
See, my question is very simple. What is communication? That's all.
Sir, communication is what I wanted to convey is understood by the other with the use of mutually understood signs, symbols, and
Yeah.
language, of course.
Okay. What else would you like to say?
Sir, I wanted to exaggerate the thing that communication is classified into verbal and
That
non-verbal.
we will come to it later,
Okay.
right? See, when we speak of communication, what does it mean? Some points the students might have left out. Communication means conveying our ideas, feelings, thoughts, or intentions in such a way that the target person receives and understands its meaning. Suppose you are communicating something but the person does not understand, then that's not communication. Because communication is a mutual process, reciprocal process. One should speak something and the other should understand. Then only effective communication takes place. Communication may take place with the help of linguistic or non-linguistic symbols, as Sakshi has rightly said. As Nirutya has rightly said, there can be verbal and non-verbal symbols in communication. Communication is the exchange of information by speaking, writing, or using some kind of medium. It also means the act of conveying meanings from one entity to a group from one entity or group to another through the use of mutually understood signs, symbols, and semiotic rules. So, this is in a nutshell what is communication. Now, here we are speaking about what is communicative competence. We have defined the word communication. We have seen what exactly communication means. Now, Sakshi, you should explain what is competence. What do you mean by competence?
Yes, sir. Sir, in my eyes, communicative competence is the ability to put forth your views, your ideas in a more convincing way. And it is also the ability to use and adapt your knowledge and skills in a proactive manner in various contexts. Sir, I would like to give a small example. A communicative competent person is engaged in turn taking when in a conversation rather than interrupting in a conversation. A competent communicative person is able to understand what are non-verbal cues or feedbacks from the receiver when the conversation is over. So this is what a competence is, or in simply we can say that acquiring proficiency in doing something is nothing but competence.
You mean to say competence is higher than skills?
Yes, sir.
It is elevation of skills.
Yes, sir.
It is
Definitely.
perfection of skills.
Yes, sir.
Nirutya, what would you like to say?
Sir, I would like to say that having a good communicative competence can be in a linguistic manner. One should
So
have
we are only looking at the word competence. What does competence mean?
having a greater way of proficiency in something can be said as competent.
You mean to say that is reaching a proficient level,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
acquiring proficiency in using a particular language or making effective communication, right? That is proficiency.
Proficiency. Yes, sir.
You want to say that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. See, competence is the ability to do something proficiently. Not only proficiency is involved, efficiency is involved, and that communication also should be successful, right? So three things are involved here. Number one, proficiency, efficiency, and success. If these three things are there, we can say it is competence, right? Okay. Sakshi, you should explain to me what is the difference between skill and competence.
Yes, sir. Sir, in my eyes, skill is the ability to do something, and competence is taking that skill to higher level. We can
Oh.
say that there's a very thin line, or skill and competence are connected to each other. Because skill is just the ability or the learned ability to do something, and competence is taking that skill to higher level with a proficiency.
Nirutti, what would you like to say?
As sir, you said that having a higher level of proficiency and taking yourself or taking a communication to an efficient manner is said to be a communicative competence. Then what about skills? So what I think is communication skills are the learning process where you have to keep on updating yourself each and every day. So the thin line between competence and skills would be a person can be skilled, but unless and until he use his skills in a proper or proactive manner, then he can said to be a competent communicator.
You are using this word proactive. What do you mean by the word proactive?
Sir, in a way where you have the sense where to talk, when to talk, and why to talk.
A child very well conveys ideas to its mother, right? Whatever I mean, the child may not be able to speak much, right? But conveys its ideas to its mother. Would you call it skill or competence?
I think, sir, it is the gained skill from what a child do is he first at the very first stage he tries to copy his parents being what I say at an another step he use his visual skills, so he learns first how to how to copy them, then he tries to communicate via whatever he listens as his listening skills. So I think it is more of a skill thing.
It's not competence.
Yes sir.
And slowly he gains competence. The child gains competence.
Yes sir, with time and experiences he gains his competence.
Okay. This is the answer. Skills are the specific learned abilities that you need to perform a given job well, right? Skills are the specific learned abilities. You have learned them. They are the abilities which you acquired by way of learning, right? To perform a given job well. Competence is a higher stage of using the skills in proficient, efficient, effective, and successful way, right? That's the difference between skill and competence. Now, what happens, whenever skill turns into competence, what things happen? Number one, the job is performed quickly and fast. It is done with ease and grace, right? It is done precisely and perfectly, right? So when these things happen, we call it competence, right? Okay. Now we have spoken about skill and competence. We have defined earlier what is communication. Now we skip this question because it has already been discussed. Now, what are the important aspects to be a good communicator? Nirutti.
Sir, according to me, to be a good communicator or to be a competent communicator, one should have following things within his mind or within his skills. So, first of all, he should have the great pronunciations, he should have proper grammar over any language, and another thing would be he should have a sense of vocabulary or the present day synonyms, I must say, to use and to gain higher proficiency.
Yes, Sakshi, what are the important aspects to be a good communicator? What important aspects are involved in order to become a good communicator?
Sir, in my view, I would like to start with the art of listening. First of all, to be a good communicator, one should also be a good listener. Because if you can't listen to the person or to the audience, you are not able to grab what your team members or what your audience want to listen from you. Secondly, I would say that the person should be confident enough. It shows that you are able to or your content is very clear, whatever you wanted to convey to your audience. Third point I would like to say is focus and control. Focus on what you wanted to convey and control on your volume, your speech, your vocabulary, your grammar. And lastly, the last point that I wanted to say is to be a good communicator, you should have a clarity of content. Whatever you wanted to convey to your audience, clarity should be there.
Nivrutti, would you like to add something to this?
Sir, as she said that one should have a clarity in whatever you want to convey. According to my opinion, while conveying something, it is just not about speaking, but it is more about listening and understanding. So what I think is, when we convey something, so that should be in a manner that the person in front of you understands it. It is not necessary for every time that you should have a great vocabulary. You should have a vocabulary that is understood by the person who is your audience. That I
Very
think.
good. Yes. Sakshi, would you like to add something to this? What Nivrutti has said?
No, sir. Actually, I agree with that. And it happens, sir, that nowadays people actually listen to response more rather than listen to understand. As he said that listening is also important, I would like to say that yes, listening skill is a really underrated thing, which should be keep in mind when to be a good communicator.
Suppose somebody is a very good communicator in English, right? Very
Yes.
good communicator. But still sometimes he faces certain difficulties in communicating. So what difficulties do you see that can occur even if you are a very good communicator?
Sir, again, I would say that there is not a clarity of content, maybe, or it happens. We are humans that sometimes we are quite nervous about speaking or lack of confidence. So I think these are some of the problems that usually a good communicator can also face.
See, I tell you one example. Once upon a time, Pandit Nehru was a very good speaker. He was a very good public speaker. And he was always well dressed. He was always very careful about his dress. Now, when he came up the days, he found that one of his shirt buttons was missing. And suddenly he became conscious about that. And that is said to be the worst speech of Pandit Nehru, because he had become conscious about that. So if some anxiety is there, if some tension is there, if some stress is there, right? Our communication, although we are very good communicators, it can be affected. It can be affected, right? The same thing is about Abraham Lincoln. There goes a story about him that he was going for a public meeting, and on the way he saw a puppy stuck up in mud. He asked his driver to stop the car. He went up to that puppy, and by folding up his sleeves and his trousers, he lifted that puppy and brought it out of the mud. Of course, he got late. When he went there, he apologized to the audience and said, sorry, for the first time I have become so late. It is because on the way I saw puppy stuck up in mud and crying. So had I come without helping that puppy here, I would not have been able to focus on you. I would have focused only on the puppy. That picture would have been rotating in my mind, the crying puppy. So therefore, I stopped there. I took the puppy out. I held that puppy. And then after that, I washed my hands. Some stains were there on his clothes. So he washed them off and then he went there. So if something is going on in your mind, if you are not concentrating on your content because of stress, anxiety, right, some kind of tension, right, some kind of urgency, suppose you have to go somewhere, you are pressed for the time, then you won't be able to focus on your contents. So even if you are a good communicator, you won't be able to convey, right? Same thing geographically. Suppose we go to some other country where the language we speak, for example, English, is not, I mean, the people there are not well acquainted with that language. So, to whatever extent you are a good communicator, you won't be able to communicate properly, right? So, sometimes geographical boundaries also prevent us at such times from being very good at communication. Anyway, we come to the next question. But this was the answer of the earlier question. Once again, what are the important aspects to be a good communicator? The answer to this question here, knowledge of the particular language, that is, you already spoken. Then ensuring, the word here, whether is typed wrongly, whether the target person or the receiver understand the same language. If he does not understand, then there will be a barrier. Then intelligibility of the pronunciation is also very important. Sometimes the Indian students cannot follow the American pronunciations. So the communication will hamper. Intelligibility of the pronunciation or the symbols, that is also very important, right? Then knowledge of using right word, that's also very important. I mean, at a proper place, we should be able to use the proper word. Big does not mean large and large does not mean big, right? Although the dictionary meaning may be same. In the end and at the end, they appear the same, but there is a big difference. At the end shows the place, whereas in the end shows the time, refers to time. So proper knowledge of words and idioms is also very necessary. Knowledge of grammar is also important, right? I mean, especially when you are learning some foreign language like English, we have to focus on grammar. Without knowing grammar, we may not be able to convey what exactly we want to say. And proper use of intonation. You know, there are many countries where English is spoken, but there is no question form as such. I mean, only the tone will decide whether it's question or answer. You want to go? That's question. I mean, the tone is important, right? Do you want to go? They may not use. They will just use, do you want to go? You want to come? Like that. So the tone, that is intonation, is also very important. Okay. How can we categorize communication skills? Or what are the three basic types of communication skills? Nirutti.
Okay, sir. Talking about categorizing communication skills, what I think is communication can be categorized as verbal communication, non-verbal communication, graphical communication. So as we had a talk on verbal communication, that there is a need of language, maybe any language, and while we are talking about English language, we should have a greater sense of its vocabulary and grammar. But talking about non-verbal communication, sometimes your emotion as a human, as we are a human being, human face is full of expressions. You might be answering with me that human face is full of expressions, and it might be that as we are taught in our acting skills that our now rasas, hasya, karuna, raudra, they uh, they usually express ourselves on our face, and we without saying a word we can express ourselves. Like someone is crying, there isn't a need of asking that are you crying, because his tears or the way he is making his facial expressions are more than sufficient. Talking about the graphical method of communication, I would say graphical method is the method where you have to actually write down things, to give some commands, to give orders, so as to obtain the answer.
Sakshi, what would you like to say?
Sir,
How
I,
can
I
we categorize communication skills, or what are the three basic types of communication skills?
Sir, coming to main question, the basic types of communication skills that are, as Nivritti said, that verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and graphic communication. So, talking about verbal communication, verbal is simply where you need spoken words. Non-verbal is simply where you don't need spoken words, and graphical communication is nothing but where you need to have the knowledge of some language, so that you are able to interpret what the communicator wants to convey. Sir, talking more about verbal communication, they are differentiated into two, that is linguistic and non-linguistic. Linguistic communication, where you need the knowledge of language. For example, we can say that while delivering some face-to-face speech or talk, we can say that it is a verbal communication under linguistic form. And when we talk about non-linguistic communication, we can say that there are some signals or symbols which you don't need, which for which you don't need to have the knowledge of language. For example, traffic signals. You know that when there is red light, we understand that we need to stop. That is universal symbols. And talking about non-verbal communication, they are where you don't need to have the knowledge of where you don't need to have spoken words. That is more about your facial expressions, your body language, your gesture, how you carry yourself, and all this. And when I talk about graphical communication, that is nothing but in a written form. For example, we receive letters, we receive emails, we are able to interpret that what the communicator wants to convey, because we have that knowledge of that subject or knowledge of that language particularly. So this is all.
So written symbols are linguistic symbols or non-linguistic symbols?
So written symbols are linguistic, we can say.
They are linguistic.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about universal? Universal, there are certain universal forms of conveying, okay, which anybody can understand, right?
Yes.
Can you cite certain examples of that?
Yes, sir. The symbol of danger, and correct symbol and cross symbol for wrong. These are some of the universal symbols.
They are universally understood,
Yeah,
for which no language is required.
required.
I mean, suppose you go to France, right? And there are certain symbols, certain signs. Even though you don't know French, you will be able to understand them,
Yes.
right? For example, go, stop, wait, right? Come here, go there. See, this kind of gesture, hand gesture means come here. If we do like this, be seated, this, stand up, right? And there are so many, we call them universally accepted non-linguistic symbols, right? Every human being understands these symbols without knowing any particular language of that particular country, right? Okay. See, verbal communication, number one, written communication, number two, and non-verbal communication, three. Verbal communication, in which you listen to a person to understand their meaning, or you speak to another person to make him understand the meaning. Written communication, in which you read their meaning, what is delivered to you, you read and understand. And in non-verbal communication, right, is the one in which you observe a person and infer meaning. You observe the gestures of that person, all kind of RTO symbols, right, signs, they all come under non-verbal communication. So verbal communication, written communication, non-verbal communication are the three main types, right? There can be subtypes also. We are not going into those details. This is a very important question for the students and for all those who want to enhance the level of their communicative competence. So Nivrutti, you should tell me, how can we enhance the level of communicative competence?
Sir, for me to enhance our communicative competence, first of all, we should develop the most important thing for communicating with someone, and that is confidence. It might be that you are not that aware of some subject or something, but you should be that confident that your answer should matter to someone. Another, coming upon, one should again have vocabulary, proper vocabulary of whatever language he have to speak on, grammar, so that he shouldn't be judged on the basis of that. Again, proper pronunciations, as you said, sir, that for an instance, we are in France. Their way of speaking English and the person who is from India, his way of speaking English would be different. But to go with that, his his place, he is right on his place, and the other person is right on his place. So to be confident enough while conveying your thoughts or your emotions is the most important thing while enhancing your communicative competence.
Okay, Sakshi, what would you like to say?
Well, sir, first of all, I would like to say that it's a very slow process to enhance your communicative skill. Just like you sow a seed and it takes long time to grow up into a big tree, it needs time. It needs hard work and it also needs a lot of time to improve yourself. Coming to main question, first of all, I think you should start with the reading skills. Number two, I would like to say that as Nivrutti said, that confidence really matters. Then third thing, clarity of your content. Yes, first of all, whenever you want to convey something, you should be clear about that content first. Then uh, third thing, I think, fourth thing I would like to say is working on your speech, your way of delivering your thoughts. And the last thing is practicing whatever you have learned. Practice is must, that whatever you have learned should be implemented in your vocabulary, implemented in your communicative skill, so that you will be able to achieve that level of competence.
Okay. See, I would like to tell you one thing. You know, there are some people who do not know English at all, but still they watch English movies and they understand each and everything. They don't understand English language as such, but still what's going on there, what kind of expressions are there, right? What kind of dialogue should be there, what one is saying to the other. they can very well understand. So how is it possible? Or sometimes the speaker speaks in the language which is not known to us, but still we can understand what he is going to say or what he is saying.
Sir, as I said, that human face is full of expressions. Sometimes it might be that you are not aware of the language or some facts, but your expressions might talk much more. Sometimes action speaks louder than words, I must.
Yes, exactly. Sakshi, what would you like to say?
Yes, as you also mentioned that there are some universal signs that we understand whether we know that language or not. So, whenever certain expressions or certain body language we see in front of us, we ultimately get to know that what the other person or the other audience want to convey to us.
It means besides the knowledge of the language, you would also put an emphasis on the body language. Body language also conveys a lot. So one who only speaks but has a very poor body language may not be a very good communicator or may not achieve that competence, right? There may be somebody who has a very good body language but does not have linguistic competence, may not be able to become a very good communicator, right? So besides the knowledge of language, because besides the way of delivering, okay, one needs to have proper body language also. That is also very important part of our communicative competence, developing communicative competence, right? So words and actions must go well together. Our words and our expressions must go well together. Okay, so that sometimes even if your audience, okay, misses the words from an action, the audience will be able to understand what exactly you want to say. So both your body language and your language must go well together in order to achieve that higher degree of communicative competence. There are certain things, as you people have said. Let us look at them. We must state ideas clearly, communicate ethically. What does this ethically mean? We should always speak in a desirable way, desirable language. Unethical language we should not use, because otherwise, if you are abusing somebody, he will concentrate only on your abuses and not on what you say, right? Then recognize when it is appropriate to communicate. That's also the most important thing, that we should know when I have to speak. Identify communication goals. What exactly I want to convey, that we must know, and we should focus on that. Select the most appropriate and effective medium for communicating. That is, which language suits that particular event, that particular occasion that you must see. Demonstrate credibility. If you are a credible speaker, people will listen to you more attentively, with more concentration. I mean, they should know that whatever you are telling them is right and true. Manage conflict. Sometimes there can be a conflict inside you, right? What happens, suppose you are speaking to somebody and if he is not paying attention, if he is not giving attention, what will happen? You will get disturbed. So there will be conflict in your mind whether you should speak or not. So that conflict you have to manage. If there is a public speaker and if there is some noise, okay, at the end of the hall, the speaker will get disturbed, and then there will be conflict in his mind. Be open-minded about another's point of view and listen attentively. Listen attentively. So these are some of the areas where we should pay attention if we want to attain communicative competence. there is a very important question, and in India we see, especially in North India, we see that students are not able, or many people are not able to communicate their ideas effectively in English. What reasons would you like to cite, Nivrutti?
Sir, excuse me, sir. Another 5 minutes you can take to wind up the session.
Yes, sir.
So, sir, starting with, not every student face this problem, but for students who are underprivileged or who come from a rural place where they actually see the English language till their 10 plus 2 as just a language or at just a subject of scoring marks, but they look at its scope when they actually go to their universities and they find people who actually don't can't speak in their native language or neither in the language like Hindi, so they have to speak English, and while doing so they face problems like lacking in confidence. They try to feel that someone would judge me on how I speak or on my pronunciation, on my grammar, so they try to not speak in English. So I think to overcome this problem some measures can be taken.
That
So
we'll see later on. Sakshi, what would you like to say? Why do some Indian students fail to communicate in English effectively?
Yes, sir. It seems to me that not all, but some of the Indian students do face problem while communicating in English. And I think, according to me, first reason would be purpose is not clear. As long as the students are in their school, the purpose of or the importance of the English language they are not getting. And the second point I would like to say is, sadly, in certain schools or in certain colleges, good English teachers are not appointed to teach the students. And third point I would say is, curriculum is inappropriate for helping the students. And lastly, fourth point is students are afraid of being judged at, or we can say they are afraid of being laughed at while making mistakes, or they can make mistakes in vocabulary or in grammar. So I think these are some of the reasons that some of the Indian students are not able to communicate in English.
The very important point is that they don't take the studies of English seriously because it is a second language.
Yeah.
And nor do they get that kind of atmosphere, that kind of environment there in the school, because that's the school where English is not important. The native or vernacular language is important. And students don't study seriously because they have to just pass the examination. They don't want to learn language. So serious studies of English language are not undertaken, and that's why it usually happens. And they don't try on their base, on their own also. They study English as second language, so there is lack of reading, lack of practice of speaking and writing. They have poor vocabulary, poor knowledge of grammar, lack of confidence, fear of committing mistakes, poor listening. They don't listen. Lack of the necessary atmosphere or environment, and above all, that's lack of interest. If interest is there, they can do anything, but they have lack of interest also. How can we improve communication in English, Nivrutti? The answer is in that question only. Okay, determination to improve. Don't be afraid of committing mistakes. Be in English speaking environment. Focus on focus skills, reading, speaking and listening, developing vocabulary, learning grammar, and all these things. Time is running out, so we will come to the next question. What is the relation between communicative competence and personality development? Nivrutti.
sir, according to me, communicative competence is, of course, a part of our personality, because it is said that you are being judged according to what you speak. For an instance, I can explain it as an example. A person wearing Armani suit or Gucci accessories, and speaking rubbish or speaking in abusive language can be judged as he's not a good personality or he's not a good communicator. But a good communicator can be said as if he is having simple living and high thinking, but having more capabilities to speak and to soothe his audience as they are a part of the conversation and just not him.
Sakshi, what would you like to say? What is the relation between communicative competence and personality development? I mean, do you think that communicative competence can contribute to the development of your personality?
Yes, sir. I do think that communicative competence contribute to your personality development because, sir, communicative competence gives you a wider view about whatever thing that comes in front of you. For example, it personality refers to your mindset, your behavior, your idea, or your own unique way of seeing the things or seeing the world. And communicative competence plays a crucial role in honing one's personality because it gives you that clarity, that confidence, that proper desirable manner to express your thoughts so that it should be convinced to the other should be convinced by the other audience.
That's good. I mean, one's personality cannot be a perfect personality unless one knows proper communicative skills and one has communicative competence. Community competence is the most important part of our personality, right? I mean, if you are very good, very handsome, very beautiful, right? Your dress is very well, and in every respect you are okay. But if you don't have community competence, that will be a minus point as far as your personality is concerned, right? Having communicative competence adds a very important dimension to one's personality. The development of communication skill gives a further boost to one's personality. So it helps. Communication helps individuals to express themselves in the most convincing way. Your thoughts, your feelings, knowledge should be passed on in the most desirable manner, and effective communication skills help you in the same. So, developing communication skills is the most important part of personality development. Without being a good communicator, you cannot be a good personality, right? The definition of a perfect personality that we see, okay, will have the first and very important point, that is developing communication skills. So, the discussion was wonderful, and you people, you too, you have answered very confidently, and I heartily congratulate you. And now, let's go back to the moderator.
Thank you for that enlightening session, Dr. Praveen Joshi. The session was lively with the student speakers' active interactions with the useful inputs that would certainly help the learners of our young learning of our young participants. We were quite impressed by the way the session progressed. Now the floor is open for discussion. We welcome the attendees to post your questions on the chat. We already have a few questions during the session. The first question is posted by Dr. Shravan Kumar. I think pronunciation is not important for communication. Please clarify.
The question is directed to whom?
Maybe to the teacher speaker.
Okay.
But that was mentioned by Shakshi, I think. If Shakshi too can answer, that would be fine.
Sakshi, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Shravan says that pronunciation is not a very important part of communication.
Sir, at some extent, pronunciation is also important. But when you try to convey your thoughts, like I said, that non-verbal communication is also effective part of communication. You can also try to express that in a graphical manner also if you want to convey your message to somebody.
Okay, that way you say it.
Yeah.
But as far as verbal communication is concerned, without pronunciation, it is not possible.
Yes,
It is
sir.
because if you don't know the pronunciation of a particular language, you will not be able to convey what exactly you want to say. For example, the other day, a boy came to me and he said, "Your efforts, okay, are at me rabble, at me rabble." I was not able to understand what exactly he wanted to say. The two words that he pronounced wrongly. Okay. I mean, of course, being a teacher, I could gather what exactly he wanted to say. But had there been somebody else, might not have been able to understand. Now you take the example of any language. If your pronunciations are not proper, how would you be a very good communicator? I mean, it's very difficult. Suppose we speak English the way we like, okay, would really be somebody able to understand if we instead of would we say would or should or could? How? It is not possible. Any language will be distorted if we don't have the knowledge of proper pronunciation. You take Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, aham. If aham is not pronounced properly and it is aham like this, I think the meaning will change. Poor and poor, pain and pen, heat and hit. How without pronunciation would be able to be a good communicator? So I mm, humbly wish to disagree with what the questioner has said.
Thank you, sir, for that convincing answer with good illustrations. And next question is posted by Dr. Bushra Wadud. How important is the nonverbal cues in the communication?
How verbal, I mean, how important is the non-verbal? I already
Nonverbal
said,
cues.
yeah, I already said that your words and your body language must go well together. If we say S, so we do like this. If you want to say no, we do like this. But suppose I say S here. This non-verbal communication, if does not go well with your verbal communication, there will be a problem in understanding.
Okay. Can we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
By Dr. Shravan Kumar again. If somebody is not replying, then communication cannot take place. I think it's incorrect. If someone is not replying, even then communication takes place. Please clarify.
I mean, if somebody is not replying, we are not aware whether he has really understood what you have said or not. I mean, there should be some kind of response, because communication is a reciprocal process. It's a reciprocal process. If you are speaking face to face, and if there is no response from the person who is standing before you, so you won't be able to understand what exactly is happening, whether he understands my language or not, whether he understands my pronunciation or not, whether he's getting at the contents or not. So those will be the questions. Reply may not be the proper word there. I would say the word answer or response. Response. I think Dr. Shravan has used the word reply in a very broader concept, but here I would say only answering or responding. If there is no response, we won't be able to understand whether the communication is rightly taking place or not.
So can we take it like this? Even when there is no response, the communication takes place, but the communication cannot be continued.
I would say that communication, whether it's complete or not, we won't be able to understand.
Yeah.
whether the purpose of the communication has been met or not, we will not be sure.
Oh. So with this, we are coming to the end of this webinar.
Yeah.
Let me take this opportunity to put forth a few concluding remarks about today's session. We had in the session how communication skills are vital to students' academic success and how that plays an important role in at all levels of their education. What are the qualities of competent communicators and how proficiently, efficiently, appropriately, and proactively they have to communicate. According to the student speakers, a good communicator should have good pronunciation, grammar, and rich vocabulary usage. And for them, a good communicator must be a good listener too. The challenges faced by the students, especially from rural area, in developing their communication skills were well demonstrated. And it was interesting to have an anecdote from Pandit Nehru's life. Now we shall move on to the formal vote of thanks. I feel it my honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on the 29th session of ELTAI webinar series, organized by Coimbatore and Ramanathapuram chapters of ELTAI. I submit my gratitude to the Almighty for guiding us in organizing this webinar successfully. Our sincere gratitude to this teacher speaker of today's webinar, Dr. Praveen Joshi, for accepting our invitation to speak on the topic communicative competence in English and for delivering an excellent practical session by involving student speakers effectively. I also thank the student speakers, Mr. Nivruti Sudhir Wankar and Ms. Sakshi Vijay Bagne, for their active interaction and enthusiasm. I feel it my duty to thank the webinar organizing committee of ELTAI for their constant guidance and backing. I thank Dr. Xavier Pradeep Singh for his technical support during the session. I thank Dr. Shankar Kumar, Secretary of Coimbatore Chapter of ELTAI, for moderating the session, and the members of Coimbatore and Ramanathapuram chapters for rendering their support to conduct this webinar successfully. I thank the attendees of the webinar for sparing their valuable time to participate. We could see a lot of comments in the chat box. Thanks a lot for that involvement and interaction during the session. On behalf of ELTAI, I thank one and all once again. There are a few announcements for you before we leave the room. The 30th session of ELTAI webinar series will be on Louis Gluck, 2020 Nobel Laureate. You may register for the event using the link shared on the chat. And those who attend the entire webinar today will receive an e-certificate of participation. We'll get your attendance details from our database. There is no need to submit any feedback form. From the 20th December onwards, we have decided to issue certificates only to the members of ELTAI. However, our webinars will be free for everyone to attend. Hence, we request you to become a member of ELTAI to make the most use of it. We are expecting your participation in all our future events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much.